In this section, we are going to discuss about primarily the concept of futures versus forwards. What is the difference between futures and forwards, and how some of these instruments get used for hedging purposes and speculation purposes. We'll introduce these terms, and then we go about trying to discuss about these terms as we go along, right? So first things first, let's understand that when we were talking about the concept of forwards, there were a set of risks that get involved in the case of forwards, right? Now, these are things that need to be addressed because these risks exist whenever we are trading in the case of forwards, right? Now, what are these risks? If you think about it, uh, we said there is a farmer and we said there is a buyer, right? Now they are effectively getting into some sort of a contract. But this is a contract between two parties. So we don't necessarily know if both the parties will turn up on the final contract day, right? What happens if the losing party does not pay up, right? Default risk, also commonly known as counterparty risk, is the risk that one party does not pay the other party at the end of the contract. Now that's a reality in forwards because there is no mechanism to regulate it, right? You can try and regulate it via legal clauses, but eventually legal costs could be huge in terms of eventually ensuring that the losing party pays up, right? So while legal clauses exist, businesses don't want to get into all that, right? So that's one part of the risk that comes in. The second part was there was a contract to buy rice, but what kind of rice is not known, right? So is the quality standard? Is the quality at a particular metric? Above it, below it, we don't know. So what if the quality of rice supplied is not standard, right? In which case the farmer might sometimes feel that the quality is better than what 90 rupee commands. The buyer might feel that the quality is worse than what 90 rupees commands. So both the parties could essentially at various points of time, depending on the outcome, be dissatisfied with what is happening. The third one is called price risk. Now, what is price risk? Is essentially this information is not easily available since these two parties are essentially trading in a sort of an isolated manner, right? So these are isolated. There is no mechanism whereby the farmer and the buyer have information or access to information of what is the price of rice in another market, right? So no access to market data around rice prices, right? Because these are two independent guys dealing with each other. One of them believes price might be 90, the other one also believes price might be 90. Who knows if the price is actually 80 in the real market? Who knows if demand supply has changed the dynamics, right? So there is a sort of a risk that comes in because of them being trading in an isolated manner, right? Now this happens because essentially futures are what is known as over the counter products, right? Also known as OTC products. What does over the counter mean is that there's no standard product that is available. Two parties meet each other, and depending on their level of comfort with each other and the fact that they mutually agree on a certain kind of a contract, they will create a contract. That's called a future. So that's called a forward contract. So forwards are essentially over the counter products, and thereby you have three broad risks, that is default risk, quality risk, and price risk that flow in, right? Now how do you deal with it in real terms? While sometimes you may not need to deal with the risk because if you trust the other party, that's fine, but in certain cases you may want to remove this risk or de-risk yourself from this, right? At this point of time, instead of having an over-the-counter product, we introduce the concept of what is known as an exchange. right? So what does an exchange do? Right, so let's introduce the concept of an exchange. The primary functions of the exchange are given as below. It acts as a watchdog. In other words, it's a regulator. It ensures that everyone fulfills their share of the promise. It helps in standardization of transactions, which means it defines what quality will come in, right? So quality and quantity get defined by these guys. And it aids price discovery purely because it's a market where multiple participants or lot of players come in, right? That's the function of an exchange. Exchange is essentially a platform where multiple players interact, right? So multiple players interact, and it is the responsibility of the exchange to ensure that there is no sort of default risk. They do it using various mechanisms which are probably better discussed at a later stage in our curriculums. But at this point, let's assume that the exchange is the watchdog who ensures that everyone pays up. So that's the primary responsibility. It removes counterparty risk. So this essentially removes your default risk. This one removes the risk of the second risk, which is the quality risk, right? So you remove quality risk here, and the third one removes the price risk. So essentially, because it's a market, there are like thousands and thousands of players who are dealing with each other. There is a better discovery of the price. If the entire market is trading on this exchange, then the price of rice that is determined in this exchange will probably be a better estimate of the price than if two parties were dealing with themselves individually, right? Now, the moment you introduce the concept of an exchange and you bring in an exchange into the equation,